For the 5th time, they forgot to invite me to Christmas dinner. So I packed my suitcase and drove off to my cabin in the mountains, in peace alone. A week later, they showed up at the door with bags and all, thinking they could still walk in whenever they pleased, as they always had. But when the door opened, they were met by a sheriff's deputy, the cameras rolling, and my lawyer waiting for them. And in that instant, they went white as a sheet. I know what you're thinking. How did I get here? How did a 67-year-old woman, a grandmother, a widow, end up facing her own children with the law? Let me tell you from the beginning. It was December 24th, 6 in the evening. I was in my kitchen wearing my apron, preparing hot apple cider. The smell of cinnamon filled the entire house. I'd bought 20 tamales, changed to a dozen BBQ ribs from Lupita's Bakery, changed to Mrs. Davis's Deli, and I even ordered a stuffed turkey because Robert, changed from Rodrigo, my eldest son, always said it reminded him of his father. The table was set, white plates with gold rims, the linen napkins I inherited from my mother. I even put out the hand-embroidered tablecloth that I only use on special occasions. I waited. 7 passed, then 8. My phone vibrated. A text from my neighbor, Sarah, changed from Estella. Grace, changed from Graciela. I saw the photos they posted on Facebook. They're all having dinner at Robert's house. My heart shrank. I opened the app with trembling hands. And there they were. Robert, his wife Valerie, my 2 grandchildren. My younger son Edward, changed from Emilio, and his partner, all smiling in front of a table full of food, glasses raised, laughter, hugs. Without me. Again. It wasn't the first time. It was the 5th. 5 Christmases in a row where they forgot to let me know. 5 times where I ended up alone, surrounded by food that no one would come to eat. I sat down at the empty table. I turned off the tree lights, and I cried in silence, as I had learned to cry in the 8 years since I became a widow. But in the middle of those tears, something changed. I wiped my face. I stood up, and I walked toward my bedroom with firm steps. I pulled a suitcase out of the closet, an old brown leather suitcase that my husband used when he traveled for business. It still smelled of his cologne. I started packing clothes, medicines, documents, and a green velvet chest that I kept at the back of the wardrobe. A chest no one knew existed, a chest full of papers that told the truth about everything. At 11 at night, I locked the front door. I got into my car. And I drove 3 hours to the cabin in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, changed from Puebla. That cabin I inherited from my husband. That cabin my children always despised because it was too far and it didn't have Wi-Fi. That cabin that to them was worthless. But to me, it was my refuge. I arrived in the early hours of the morning. The cold mountain air hit my face. The stars shone brighter than they do in the city. Everything was silent. For the first time in years, I breathed easy. I went inside. I started the fireplace. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, kept as it's common in the U.S., and I sat by the fire with the green chest on my lap. I slowly opened the lid. Inside were the loans Robert never repaid, $34,000, changed from $340,000 pesos, for a business that never existed. $18,000, changed from $180,000 pesos that Valerie asked to borrow for urgent debts that I later found out were from online gambling. $52,000, changed from $520,000 pesos that Edward needed for the down payment on his condo, but used to go on a trip to Europe with his partner. There were also the deeds to my properties, the original will, and something else, copies of texts and emails where they planned to declare me incompetent to take everything. Because I wasn't stupid. I never was. I had only been too much of a mother. But that night, in front of the fire, I made a decision. No more. I took out my phone. I dialed a number I had saved for months. Mr. Miller, changed from Licenciado Mendoza, I said when he answered. This is Grace Turner, changed from Graciela Torres. I need you to come see me first thing tomorrow morning. I'm filing charges against my children. There was silence on the other end. Are you sure, Mrs. Turner? More certain than I've ever been in my life. I hung up. I closed the chest, and for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. Because I knew that when my children finally noticed my absence, when they came looking for me with their excuses and their manipulations, I would be waiting for them, but not alone. And what happened a week later changed everything forever. If you want to know how this story took a turn no one expected, subscribe to the channel, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. Mr. Miller arrived at the cabin the next day, early. He was a man in his 50s, serious, with a worn leather briefcase and a look that inspired confidence. We sat by the fireplace. I served him drip coffee, changed from café de olla, that I had made that morning. The steam rose between us as I opened the green chest. Mr. Miller, I began, my voice firm, I need you to see this. I pulled out the documents one by one, signed promissory notes, transfer receipts, text messages, emails. Everything organized by date, everything marked with marginal notes that I had written myself. He reviewed each paper in silence. Occasionally, he looked up at me, surprised. Mrs. Turner, he finally said, you have documented all of this with a precision. That's impressive. I've been saving proof for years, counselor. Years hoping things would change, but I can't go on like this. I told him everything. How after my husband's death 8 years ago, my children began to see me differently. I was no longer mom. I was a wallet, a family bank that never collected. Robert showed up first. Mom, I have an amazing business opportunity. I just need $34,000. I'll pay you back in 6 months. 6 months turned into 8 years. I never saw a dime back. Then it was Valerie, his wife. She would show up with red eyes, dramatizing crises that I later found out were lies. Mother-in-law, we have a terrible debt. If we don't pay, they'll foreclose on the house. I gave her $18,000. The house was never at risk, but her online casino addiction was real. Edward, my younger son, the one I thought was different, also failed me. Mom, I found the perfect condo. I just need the down payment. I transferred him $52,000. A week later, I saw photos on his social media from Paris, London, Rome. He didn't even bother to invent an excuse. But that's not all, counselor, I continued, pulling out another folder. 3 months ago, they tried to forge my signature. I showed him copies of notary documents, papers where I supposedly authorized the sale of a piece of land my husband left me, a piece of land valued at $450,000, changed from $4,500,000 pesos. The signature looked like mine, but I never signed those papers. This is attempted fraud, the counselor said, standing up. Ma'am, with this, we can proceed legally immediately. Wait, I stopped him. There's more. I took out my phone. I opened a recording app. I put the audio on speaker. It was a conversation between Robert and Valerie. I had recorded them without their knowledge during a family meal 2 months ago, when I got up to go to the bathroom and left my phone recording hidden under a cushion. Robert's voice was clear. We need to act fast. My mom is old now. If we can get a doctor to certify that she's not mentally sound, we can take control of everything. Valerie's voice responded, Your brother already spoke to a lawyer. He says with 2 witnesses and a doctor's certificate, we can declare her incompetent. Everything would go into a trust, administered by us. Robert laughed. Poor mom, always so trusting, so sentimental. She doesn't know this is about business, not family. The silence in the cabin was heavy when the recording ended. Mr. Miller looked at me with a mixture of indignation and respect. "Mrs. Turner," he said slowly, "you don't just have evidence, you have a solid case, very solid." I nodded. I felt tears wanting to come out, but I held them back. I had cried enough. "I want you to prepare everything, counselor. Lawsuit for fraud, for financial abuse, and I want you to install security cameras in this cabin, good cameras, with audio." "You expect them to come here?" "I know them. When they realize I've disappeared, they'll panic. Not for me, but because they need me to sign those land sale papers. And when they find out where I am, they'll come. Unannounced. Like they always have." Mr. Miller smiled for the first time. "And you will be prepared." "Exactly." We spent the rest of the day organizing everything. He made calls, contacted a known judge, spoke with a security technician who arrived that same afternoon to install the cameras. While they worked, I walked the cabin grounds. The pine forest smelled of damp earth. The birds were singing. The peace I felt was something I hadn't experienced in years. My husband loved this place. He always said, "Grace, when I can't take the city noise anymore, this is where we'll retire. You and I, tranquil." We never got to retire together. A heart attack took him too soon. But now I was here, fulfilling that dream, even if I was alone. "Ma'am," the counselor called from the door. "All set. The cameras are running. They record automatically when they detect movement." Perfect. That night, when everyone left, I sat on the cabin porch with a blanket over my shoulders. My phone started ringing. Robert, Edward, Valerie, texts, calls. I read them all. I didn't answer any. "Mom, where are you?" "We urgently need to talk." "There are some papers you have to sign." I smiled in the dark. Let them wait. Let them search. Because when they finally found me, I wasn't going to be the same old mom. The messages didn't stop all week. Every morning I woke up to the phone vibrating. 20, 30, 40 notifications, all from them. All with the same tone. First false concern, then barely disguised demand. "Mom, we're worried. Are you okay?" "Answer, please. You're making us anxious. 3 days have passed. This isn't normal. We're going to your house." I read each one while drinking my coffee, sitting on the cabin porch, and I didn't reply. Mr. Miller had advised me, leave them in uncertainty. Let them get desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. And he was right. On the 4th day, the messages changed tone. Robert wrote, "Mom, we need you to come back. There are urgent documents for the land. The buyer is only waiting until the end of the month. If we don't sign, we lose the sale and the $450,000. There it was. The real reason for their concern. Valerie was more direct. "Mother-in-law, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is very selfish of you. We have serious problems and you're disappearing like a rebellious teenager. Get over the Christmas dinner thing. It was a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? 5 years in a row of misunderstandings. Edward tried the sensitive son card. "Mom, if you're upset, let's talk. But disappearing like this doesn't solve anything. We're family. Family doesn't abandon each other." The irony hurt me. Family doesn't abandon each other. And what had they done to me? But I didn't reply. I stuck to my routine in the cabin. In the mornings, I walked through the forest. The cold air cleared my mind. I observed the pines, listened to the river running nearby, picked up dried pine cones for the fireplace. In the afternoons, I reviewed my documents, over and over, checking dates, amounts, details, preparing myself. Mr. Miller came on the 5th day with news. "Mrs. Turner, I hired a private investigator. I asked him to review your daughter-in-law Valerie's finances." He pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements, screenshots, transaction records. "Your daughter-in-law has active debts on 3 online casino platforms. The total is $89,000, changed from $890,000 pesos. She's been taking out loans from loan sharks, changed from agiotistas, dangerous people. I felt a weight in my stomach, not for her, but for my grandchildren, 2 teenagers living in that house, with that pressure, with those problems. There's more, the counselor continued. Your son Edward also has financial problems. He owes back rent, 3 months unpaid. The landlord has already started the eviction process. And Robert? Robert is the most calculating. He doesn't have serious personal debts, but he does need that land money. He invested in an import business that is failing. If he doesn't inject capital soon, he loses everything. Then everything made sense. They didn't need me. They needed my money, my properties, my signature. And the attempted fraud? I asked. I've already filed the formal complaint. The notary who authorized those false documents is under investigation. Your son Robert will be called for questioning next week. I nodded. The pieces of the puzzle fit perfectly. That night, as the fire crackled in the fireplace, I took out old photographs from a box. Photos from when my children were little. Robert in his elementary school uniform, smiling with no teeth. Edward on my lap, hugging me with those chubby little arms. When did it all go wrong? At what moment did I stop being their mother and become their resource? A tear fell onto a photograph. I wiped it away carefully. I missed those boys. But those boys no longer existed. On the 7th day, I received a different message. It was from my oldest grandson, Sean, changed from Sebastian, 16 years old. Grandma, Dad is furious. He says if you don't show up, they're going to come looking for you. Please let us know you're okay. I miss you. My heart squeezed. It wasn't his fault. For the first time all week, I replied to a message, but not to Robert, not to Edward, not to Valerie, to Sean. I'm fine, my love. I just needed time for myself. I love you very much. His response was immediate. When are you coming back? Soon. But when I come back, things are going to be different. He didn't understand what I meant, but he would. Soon everyone would understand. That same night, Robert wrote the message I was waiting for. I know where you are, Mom. We're coming there tomorrow, everyone. We need to talk in person, and you're going to sign those papers. The drama is over. I read the message 3 times. I walked to the window. The security cameras were blinking with their little red lights in the dark. Everything was recording. I called Mr. Miller. They're coming, I said simply. Are you ready? I looked at my reflection in the window glass. A 67-year-old woman, tired, hurt, but standing. More than ready. And tomorrow, everything was going to explode. The morning of the 8th day dawned cold and cloudy. I woke up early. I made coffee. I dressed carefully. A wine-colored wool sweater, dark pants, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. I wanted to look dignified, strong. Mr. Miller arrived at 9 with 2 other people. Commander Hayes, changed from Comandante Ruiz, a state trooper, changed from Policia Ministerial, in his 40s with a serious gaze, and a young woman with a professional camera. Mrs. Turner, the commander greeted me. Mr. Miller filled me in on the situation. I will be present as an official witness. Everything that happens will be recorded. Thank you, Commander. Ms. Fernandez, he pointed to the young woman, will document everything on video. It's protocol in these cases. I nodded. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was clear. We reviewed the plan once more. The exterior cameras were already recording. The professional camera would capture everything from inside. The commander would remain visible from the start. No surprises. Everything legal. Everything documented. What time did you say they would arrive? The counselor asked. Robert wrote that they would leave early. It's 3 hours from the city. I calculate between 11 and 12. We waited. I made more coffee. I reviewed the documents one last time. The commander made some calls from the porch. The camera operator adjusted her equipment. At 11:30, we heard the engines. 2 SUVs were coming up the dirt road. A black one, a white one. I watched them kick up dust on their way to the cabin. "They're here," I announced, feeling the adrenaline rush through my body. "Stay calm, ma'am," the counselor told me. "Remember, you are in control. You have the truth." The SUVs parked in front of the cabin. The doors opened. First out was Robert, tall, 42 years old, with that demeanor he always had, as if the world owed him something. He was wearing dark glasses even though the day was cloudy. Behind him, Valerie. Perfect makeup, freshly done nails, a designer bag hanging from her arm. As always, appearances. Out of the other SUV stepped Edward with his partner, David, changed from Daniel. And to my surprise, my 2 grandchildren were with them. Sean and Macy, changed from Marcella, 16 and 14 years old. That wasn't in my plans. I didn't want the children to witness this. But it was too late. Robert walked toward the door with determined steps. He didn't knock. He turned the handle directly, as he had done all his life, as if this cabin were his. The door didn't open. It was locked. He tried again, harder. Nothing. "Mom," he shouted, pounding on the door. "Open up. We came all the way from the city. What games are these?" I looked at the commander. He nodded. I walked to the door. I took a deep breath, and I opened it. The expression on Robert's face went from annoyance to confusion in a second, because he didn't find me alone. Commander Hayes was by my side, uniformed, his badge visible. The camera operator was aiming her equipment directly at them, and Mr. Miller stepped out from behind me with a folder full of documents. The silence was absolute. What is this?" Robert stammered, taking off his glasses. Valerie took a step back. Edward went pale. The grandchildren looked at each other, scared. "This," I said with a firm voice, "is the end of many things. Come in. We need to talk." "Mom, I don't understand anything," Robert said, but his voice no longer sounded authoritative. It sounded nervous. "You will understand. Believe me, you will understand." Commander Hayes formally introduced himself. "Commander Esteban Hayes, State Trooper. Your mother requested my presence as a witness to this meeting. Everything will be recorded for the legal protection of both parties." Valerie whispered something to Robert. He shook his head. "Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family." "Why are there police? Why cameras? What did they make you believe?" "No one made me believe anything, Robert. On the contrary, I finally opened my eyes." Edward tried to approach. "Mom, if you're upset about Christmas, we're sorry. Seriously, it was a mistake. But this is too much." "A mistake?" I repeated, feeling the old rage rising in my throat. 5 years of mistakes? Or was the mistake trying to forge my signature to sell my land? The silence that followed was like a thunderclap. Robert opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. Everyone knows." Mr. Miller stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have here documented evidence of attempted fraud, misappropriation of funds, and conspiracy to declare mental incompetence without medical foundation. Do you want to discuss it out here, or would you prefer to come inside?" Valerie broke first. "Robert, let's go. This is a trap." "No one is leaving," the commander said with quiet authority. "Not until the situation is clarified." Sean, my grandson, looked at me with tearful eyes. "Grandma, what's going on?" My heart broke, but I couldn't go back. "Something is happening that should have happened a long time ago, my love. The truth." And then, the confrontation that would change everything forever began. They entered the cabin in silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence filled with barely concealed fear. Robert walked ahead, trying to maintain his authoritative posture, but his hands were trembling. Valerie was biting her nails, something I had never seen her do. Edward did not look up from the floor. The grandchildren sat together on the sofa, confused, scared. "Sit down," I ordered, and my voice sounded different. Firm. Without pleading, without that maternal tone I always used not to inconvenience them. Mr. Miller placed his briefcase on the coffee table. He opened it calmly, taking out folders organized by color. The camera operator adjusted her equipment. Commander Hayes stood by the door, arms crossed. "Mom," Robert began, "I don't know what these people told you, but no one told me anything. I investigated it myself. I documented it myself. I opened my eyes, myself. I took out the green velvet chest. I placed it on the table with a dry thud that made Valerie jump. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, looking at them one by one. No one answered. "It's the truth you thought I would never discover." I opened the chest. I pulled out the first document. "Robert, October 2017, you asked me for $34,000 for an import business. You told me you would pay me back with interest in 6 months. You signed this promissory note." I showed him the paper. His signature was there, clear, indisputable. 8 years have passed. I never saw a dime. "Mom, the business didn't work out. I already explained to you." "You didn't explain anything to me. You disappeared for 2 months, and when you reappeared, you acted like it never happened." I pulled out another document. "Valerie, March 2019. You begged me for $18,000. You said you had a debt with the bank, that they were going to foreclose on the house. You were crying. You were hugging me. You were telling me, 'Mother-in-law, you are my salvation.'" Valerie stiffened. "I hired a private investigator. Do you know what he discovered?" I pulled out the bank statements Mr. Miller had given me. That there was never a foreclosure, that you spent those $18,000 on online casinos, and that today you owe $89,000 to loan sharks. Dangerous people, Valerie, so dangerous that they are threatening your family. She stood up abruptly. "That's a lie. You have no right to investigate me." "Sit down," Commander Hayes said in a calm but authoritative voice. Valerie sat down, trembling. I turned to Edward, my younger son, the one who was always more affectionate, the one I thought was different. "Edward, June 2020, you asked me for $52,000 for the down payment on your condo. You said you were finally going to have your own home. I felt so proud." Edward closed his eyes. "A week later, I saw your photos in Europe, Paris, London, Rome, 3 months of travel. Where did that money come from, Edward?" "Mom, where? I had savings." "A lie," Mr. Miller interrupted, pulling out more papers. "His bank account was at 0. The only large deposit was the transfer from his mother. That money financed his trip. And today, he owes 3 months of rent. His landlord started eviction proceedings 2 weeks ago." David, Edward's partner, looked at him with disbelief. "Is that true?" Edward didn't answer. He just buried his face in his hands. Sean, my grandson, stood up. "Grandma, I don't understand. Did Dad steal from you?" "Sit down, Sean," Robert ordered. "No, I want to know what's going on." I knelt in front of my grandson. I took his hands. "My love, your parents didn't steal from me, but they did lie to me. They used me. And when I had nothing left to give, they tried to take the little I had left." "How?" I looked at Robert. He avoided my gaze. "Counselor," I said, "show them the documents." Mr. Miller placed the copies of the notary papers on the table, the papers where I supposedly authorized the sale of the land. This reached the public registry 3 months ago. A request to sell the property located in downtown Denver, changed from Coyoacan, valued at $450,000, with the signature of Mrs. Grace Turner. He handed the documents to Robert. "The problem is that Mrs. Grace never signed this. The signature is fake." "A pretty good forgery, but fake." Robert looked at the papers. His face went from pale to red. The notary said it was legal. Notary Smith, changed from Ramirez, is under investigation for fraud. He has already testified. He said you paid him $15,000, changed from $150,000 pesos, to process this sale without verifying the signer's identity. Valerie exploded. "This was your idea, Robert. I told you not to do it." "Shut up. You're the one who has us buried in debt." "Because of you. Because you never earn enough. Because your business is a failure." They started screaming at each other, blaming each other, destroying each other in front of everyone. The grandchildren were crying. Edward still had his head in his hands. David watched everything in shock. Commander Hayes clapped his hands twice, loudly. "Silence!" Everyone fell silent. "Mrs. Turner," the commander said, "do you wish to file formal charges?" That was the moment, the decision that would change everything. I looked at my children, at Robert, who now looked like a frightened child, at Edward, who was crying silently, at Valerie, who was trembling with rage and fear. I looked at my grandchildren, at Sean, who looked at me with pleading eyes, at Macy, who didn't understand anything but felt her world crumbling. I took a deep breath. "Before answering that," I said slowly, "I want them to hear something." I took out my phone. I opened the recording app. I recorded this 2 months ago, at the Sunday family dinner, when I got up to go to the bathroom. I pressed play. And then Robert's voice filled the cabin. "We need to act fast. My mom is old now. If we can get a doctor to certify that she's not mentally sound, we can take control of everything." And in that moment, I saw their spirits break. The audio kept playing. Every word was a knife. Valerie's voice sounded clear. "Your brother already spoke to a lawyer. He says with 2 witnesses and a doctor's certificate, we can declare her incompetent. Everything would go into a trust, administered by us." Robert tried to stand up. "Mom, turn that off." But I didn't turn it off. I let it continue. His own voice went on. "Poor Mom, always so trusting, so sentimental. She doesn't know this is about business, not family." And then the laughter. That laughter that had kept me awake for weeks. Sean stood up abruptly, looking at his father with an expression I had never seen on him. Horror. Absolute disappointment. "Dad, did you say that? Did you really want to declare Grandma crazy?" Robert held out his hands. "Son, it's more complicated than—" "Answer, yes or no." We were desperate. Your mother has debts. The business is failing. You needed to rob your own mother?" Sean finished, tears streaming down his face. "Declare her incompetent to take her money? Is that what you needed?" Macy, my granddaughter, was crying silently. She got up from the sofa and ran to me. She hugged me tightly. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "You have nothing to apologize for, my love," I said, stroking her hair. Edward finally spoke, his voice broken. "Mom, I knew. Robert told me his plan. I tried to convince him not to do it, but I needed money too. I thought if you guys handled the legal part, I would just receive my share of the inheritance earlier." "Earlier than when I died, you mean?" He bowed his head. "Yes." The brutal honesty hurt more than the lies. David, his partner, moved away from him. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. Your own mother, Edward." "You guys don't understand the pressure," Valerie suddenly shouted. "Living with debt, dealing with threats. We needed that money." "Then work," I said simply. "Like everyone else does, like I did when your father-in-law died and left me with enormous responsibilities. I worked. I didn't steal. I didn't lie. You have properties. You have money saved. You don't need all that at your age. At my age? I repeated, feeling the indignation rise. At 67 years old, do I no longer deserve to have anything? Do I no longer deserve to decide what I worked for all my life? Mr. Miller intervened, placing more documents on the table. Here I have the complete records. Mrs. Turner loaned you, in total, $104,000, changed from $1,040,000 pesos over 8 years. Not a penny was returned. Furthermore, there is evidence of systematic emotional manipulation. He pulled out printouts of messages. He read them aloud. Robert, 6 months ago. Mom, if you don't help us, we'll lose everything. Do you want your grandchildren to end up on the street? Edward, 4 months ago. Mom, I thought I could count on you. I guess I was wrong. I guess money is more important than your son. Valerie, 3 months ago. Mother-in-law, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? With selfishness. Every message was worse than the last. Emotional blackmail, manipulation, manufactured guilt. What did you do for me? I asked Valerie directly. Tell me, what did you do? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I opened my home to you. I gave you my money. I watched your children when you needed time off. I cooked for your parties. I kept your secrets. I forgave your forgetfulness. And when I had nothing left to give, when you had wrung me dry, you tried to take the only thing I had left, my dignity. My voice broke on the last word, but I didn't cry. I had cried enough in my life. Commander Hayes checked his watch. Mrs. Turner, I need you to decide. Do you proceed with criminal charges or do we reach a family settlement? Everyone looked at me, waiting, fearing. I looked at Robert. He avoided my eyes. I looked at Edward. He silently pleaded with me. I looked at Valerie. She hated me. I could see it in her gaze. And I looked at my grandchildren, Sean and Macy, 2 innocent teenagers caught in their parents' venom. I want to make a proposal, I finally said. Mr. Miller tensed. Ma'am, remember that. I know, counselor, but I want them to decide. I stood up. I walked toward the window. Outside, the pine trees swayed in the wind. Everything was peaceful out there. Everything was war in here. I have 2 options for you, I began. Option 1, I file formal charges. Robert faces accusations of attempted fraud. Valerie, too. Edward for complicity. All 3 of you could end up with criminal records, possibly jail time. I heard sobs behind me. I didn't turn around. Option 2, we resolve this as a family, but with my conditions, and they are non-negotiable. What conditions? Robert asked in a weak voice. I turned to face them. First, you return every dollar I loaned you, the full $104,000. You can do it in monthly payments over 5 years, but you pay it all back. Mom, that's impossible. Don't interrupt me. Second condition, a temporary restraining order. 3 years without direct contact, except for supervised occasions or real emergencies. I need space. I need to heal. Valerie scoffed. That's absurd. Third condition, mandatory family therapy. All 3 of you, individual and group. With a psychologist of my choosing, you will pay for it. And what do we gain? Valerie asked sarcastically. I looked at her steadily. You gain not going to jail. You gain your children not growing up visiting you behind bars. You gain a chance to learn to be decent human beings. The silence was absolute. Fourth and final condition, I continued, feeling my voice strengthen. You forfeit any rights to my inheritance. Everything I own will go to a foundation I will create for elderly women who are victims of family abuse, and a trust for Sean and Macy, which they will receive when they turn 25. You can't do that, Robert shouted. Yes, I can. It's my money, my life, my decision. And then I gave them 60 seconds to choose their fate. 60 seconds, I repeated, looking at the clock on the wall. Decide now. Commander Hayes took out his notebook, ready to jot down the decision. The camera operator continued to record every gesture, every tear, every moment of desperation. Robert looked at Valerie. She shook her head, furious. Edward looked at the floor, his hands trembling. "This is crazy," Valerie said. "You're blackmailing us." "No," I corrected calmly. "I'm giving you a way out, something you never gave me." "But $100,000, where are we going to get that kind of money?" "The same place you planned, to get the $450,000 from the land. From work. From effort. From living within your means." 30 seconds, announced Mr. Miller. Sean approached his father. "Dad, accept it. Please, I can't see you go to jail." Macy was still hugging me, crying silently. Robert closed his eyes, his jaw tensed. I could see the internal struggle, pride versus survival. 15 seconds. "Robert," Valerie whispered, "say something." 5 seconds. Robert opened his eyes. He looked at me directly. And for the first time in years, I saw something real in his gaze. Not manipulation, not calculation, genuine fear. "I accept," he said, his voice breaking. "I accept your conditions, Mom," Commander Hayes wrote in his notebook. "And you, Mrs. Valerie Marquez, kept, as it is a common surname in the U.S.?" Valerie clenched her fists. Her face was red with contained rage. "I don't have a choice, do I? Either I accept or I go to prison." "That's the reality," I confirmed. "Then I accept. But I want you to know this is cruel. You are cruel." "No, Valerie. Cruel was what you did to me for 8 years. This is justice." Mr. Miller took out pre-prepared documents from his briefcase. "You will have to sign a legal agreement. Everything will be in writing. Any breach will automatically reactivate the criminal charges." He placed 3 sets of papers on the table. Robert was the first to approach. He read quickly, his hands trembling as he flipped through the pages. "This says we are prohibited from coming within 100 yards of you." "For 3 years, yes. Except for supervised meetings or actual medical emergencies." "And holidays? Christmas? Birthdays? You will celebrate without me, as you were already doing." The blow was direct. Robert lowered his gaze. Edward signed without reading everything. His tears stained the paper. Valerie took the pen with such force that I thought she would break it. She signed each page with rage, violent strokes that almost tore through the paper. "Done!" she spat the words out. "Are you happy now? Have you humiliated us enough?" "I didn't humiliate you. You humiliated yourselves with your actions." Mr. Miller collected the signed documents. "Commander, can you certify as a witness?" "Of course." The commander also signed, officially sealing the agreement. Sean was still looking at his father with a devastated expression. "Dad, did you really do all that? Did you really plan to declare her incompetent?" Robert tried to approach his son, but Sean backed away. "Don't touch me. I don't want you to touch me right now." "Son, please." "You lied to me. For years you told me Grandma was complicated, that she was difficult, that she exaggerated, and all this time it was you. You were the problem." Macy separated from me and walked toward her mother. "Mom, is the casino thing true? Is it true we have debts?" Valerie didn't answer. She just looked away. "Mom." "Yes," she finally admitted, her voice harsh. "I have problems, but that doesn't give your grandmother the right to destroy this family." "I didn't destroy anything," I said firmly. "You had already done that work long before today." Mr. Miller put all the documents in his briefcase. "The first payment must be made on February 1st. That's $1,133. 40 changed from 17,334 pesos monthly for 60 months. The transfer details are in the agreement. And the therapy? Edward asked in a weak voice. I will send you the psychologist's details. The first session must be within 2 weeks. If you miss 3 consecutive sessions, the agreement is broken. Robert ran his hands through his hair, desperate. How are we going to pay for all this? The business is bankrupt. Valerie's debts. That is no longer my problem, I said simply. You created this mess. You fix it. But we're your family. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't betray. Family doesn't plan to destroy its own members. Commander Hayes cleared his throat. Mrs. Turner, is there anything else you need? Yes, for them to leave. We're done here. Valerie was already walking toward the door. Let's go. I can't stand another minute in this place. Robert took his coat. Edward wiped his tears, but Sean and Macy stood still. Grandma, Sean said, his voice trembling, are we also prohibited from coming here? My heart squeezed. Those children were innocent in all this. You can visit me whenever you want, my loves. You are innocent in all of this. Really? Macy asked, hopeful. Really? In fact, I looked at the counselor. I want it to be clear in the agreement that the grandchildren can visit me freely, with or without their parents. That will be established, Mr. Miller confirmed. Sean ran to me and hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry I didn't realize what was happening sooner. You don't have to apologize for anything. You're a good boy. Robert watched the scene from the doorway with an indescribable expression. Sean, Macy, let's go, he ordered. In a moment, Dad, Sean replied, without letting go of me. And in that moment, Robert understood that he had lost something more than money or property. He had lost the respect of his own children. Valerie was already in the SUV, impatiently honking the horn. But Robert was still standing in the doorway, motionless, looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Mom, he finally said, his voice hoarse. I never wanted it to come to this. But it did, because of your decisions, because of your lies. I was desperate. The business. I lost so much money. The suppliers cheated me. The imports were delayed. Customers canceled. Everything fell apart in months. And your solution was to rob me? It wasn't going to be robbery. I thought with the land money I could save everything, pay you back what I owed you, start over. Lie, Mr. Miller interrupted. The emails we have show that you plan to split the money into 3 parts. None of it was intended to repay Mrs. Turner. Robert closed his eyes, trapped in his own lie. Edward remained seated on the sofa, his head in his hands. David was by the window, arms crossed, processing everything he had heard. Edward, I said, looking at my younger son, look at me. He slowly looked up. His eyes were red, swollen. Why? You were the one who always talked about honesty, about values, about being different from your brother. Why did you do the same thing to me? Because I'm weak, he admitted, his voice broken. All my life, I've been the younger brother, the one living in Robert's shadow, the one who was never enough. And when Robert offered me a way to be somebody, I took it without thinking, without caring who I hurt. You hurt me, Edward. I know, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. You were going to receive your part when I died, you mean. Did you want me to die, Edward? No, of course not, Mom. Then what did you want? Because you planned to declare me incompetent. That meant locking me up somewhere, taking away my freedom, treating me as if I were already dead. The silence was deafening. David spoke for the first time. Mrs. Turner, I didn't know anything about this. I swear. If I had known, I would have stopped Edward. I know, David. You are clearly a good person. I wish my son would learn from you. Edward sobbed louder. Sean and Macy were still by my side. Macy took my hand. Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Anything, my love." "Why did you never say anything? Why did you endure so much?" I took a deep breath. It was a question I had asked myself 1,000 times. Because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid that if I confronted them, I would lose them forever. I preferred to bear the pain than live without family. And now? Now I understand that solitude with dignity is better than company with humiliation. Macy hugged me tighter. Commander Hayes checked his watch. "Sir and Madam, it is time to leave. The agreement is signed. The conditions are clear." Robert finally moved toward the door. But before leaving, he turned back one last time. "Mom, I know you think I'm a monster, but I want you to know that I do love you, in my clumsy, misguided way. But I love you." I looked him in the eyes. Love isn't just words, Robert. Love is actions, and your actions showed me the exact opposite. He flinched as if I had hit him. The 3 years of distance will give you time to think about that. Time to understand the difference between caring and truly loving. Robert nodded slowly and left. Edward got up from the sofa, trembling. "Mom, I'm going to comply. I swear. I'll pay everything. I'll go to therapy. I'll change." "I hope so. For your sake. For David's sake, who loves you despite your mistakes." David approached and gave me a hug. "Thank you for not destroying him completely. I'll help him be better. I know you will." Edward and David left together. Only Valerie remained in the SUV, furious, honking the horn incessantly. Sean sighed. "We have to go. Mom is freaking out." "I know. Go. But remember, this door is always open for you." "Can we come next weekend?" Macy asked. "Of course. I'll make your favorite hamburgers," changed from enchiladas. The two hugged me one last time and ran toward the SUV. The 2 SUVs drove off. I watched them disappear down the dirt road, kicking up dust in their wake. When the sound of the engines completely faded, I stood on the porch, breathing the fresh mountain air. Mr. Miller approached me. "Mrs. Turner, you were very brave today." I didn't feel brave. I felt shattered. "But you did it, and that's what matters." Commander Hayes put away his notebook. "Ma'am, if they ever breach the agreement, don't hesitate to call me. Here's my card." "Thank you, Commander, for everything. I just did my job." But between us, I'm glad when an elderly person reclaims their dignity. It doesn't happen as often as it should. They both said goodbye and left in their patrol car. The camera operator packed up her equipment. "Ma'am, would you like a copy of the recording?" "Yes, please. On a USB drive." "Of course. I'll send it to you tomorrow with the counselor." She also left. I was left alone in the cabin. I walked inside slowly. I locked the door. I walked to the sofa and let myself fall. My whole body was shaking. The adrenaline of the last hours finally abandoned me. And then, finally, I cried. I cried for the family I had lost. I cried for the years of abuse I silently endured. I cried for the woman I was, always giving, always forgiving, always forgetting herself. But I also cried with relief, because for the first time in 8 years, I was breathing free. I got up after a while. I washed my face with cold water. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea. And I sat by the fireplace with the green chest on my lap. There was one last document I hadn't shown them. I pulled it out carefully. It was the new will, the one I had signed the week before with Mr. Miller. I read it one more time, making sure everything was as I wanted. The Foundation for Elderly Women Victims of Family Abuse would receive 60% of my estate. The Trust for Sean and Macy would receive 35%. And the remaining 5% would go to David for being the only good person to enter this family in years. Robert, Edward, and Valerie, nothing, 0, because love is demonstrated. And they demonstrated that they never truly loved me. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence, of peace, of waking up without knots in my stomach. I stayed in the cabin, enjoying the sound of the wind through the pines, the crackle of the fire at night, the taste of coffee drunk unhurriedly. Sean and Macy came the first weekend, as they promised. They arrived by bus, alone, without their parents. We cooked together. We walked through the woods. We talked about everything and nothing. I told them stories from when their grandfather was alive, from when their dad and uncle were good kids, before money changed their hearts. "Grandma," Sean asked me while we were chopping vegetables for dinner, "do you think Dad can change?" "I want to believe it," I replied honestly. "But real change only comes when you hit rock bottom, and I'm not sure your dad has hit rock bottom yet." "Mom is worse," Macy said quietly. "She screams all the time. She blames Dad. Dad blames her. The house is hell." It hurt to hear it, but it wasn't my responsibility to fix it. "Do you know anything about Uncle Edward?" I asked. "I talked to him a few days ago," Sean said. "He sounds different, more serious. He said he started looking for a second job to pay faster." "I'm happy to hear that." The following Monday, I received a call from Mr. Miller. "Mrs. Turner, I have news. Edward made his first payment, the full $1,133.40, 2 weeks before the deadline." I felt something warm in my chest. Surprise. Hope. "And Robert?" There was a pause. "Robert hasn't transferred anything, but there are still 2 weeks left." "I understand." "Also, Robert's wife, Valerie, tried to contact me. She wants to renegotiate the terms of the agreement." "Renegotiate?" "She says they are too harsh, that they can't comply, that we should consider a 50% reduction." I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. "Tell her there is no renegotiation. The agreement is signed. Either they comply or she faces charges. It's that simple." "I'll tell her." I hung up and looked out the window. Valerie had learned nothing. She was still looking for shortcuts, easy outs, ways to avoid consequences. But Edward paid. That night I lit a candle in the small chapel my husband had built in the cabin. I prayed for my children, for their lost souls, for the possibility of redemption. A widow's stand. The cabin in the Rockies continued. The next morning, while I was preparing muffins, changed from pan dulce, I heard a car approaching. My heart raced. The cameras were still running. If it was Robert violating the agreement, it would be recorded. But when I looked out the window, I saw an unfamiliar car. An old but well-maintained gray sedan. The door opened and Edward got out, alone. He walked to the door and knocked softly. I hesitated for a moment. Then I opened it. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling. "I know I shouldn't be here. I know the agreement says 3 years without contact, but I need to tell you something. You have 5 minutes." He nodded. He didn't come inside. He stayed on the porch as if he didn't deserve to enter. I paid my first installment. And I'm going to pay all the others. I got a night job at a warehouse. I still have my normal job during the day. I sleep little, but I deserve it. I'm happy to hear that. I also started therapy. The psychologist asked me when I stopped being myself, and I didn't know how to answer because I don't remember ever truly being myself. His eyes filled with tears. I was always the younger brother, the one who lived comparing himself, the one who was never enough. And when Robert offered me a way to be someone, I took it without thinking, without caring who I hurt. "You hurt me, Edward." "I know, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life." He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "But I came to tell you something more important, something you need to know." "What is it?" "Valerie is planning something. I overheard a phone conversation 3 days ago. She was talking to someone about contesting the agreement and getting witnesses to testify that you were under duress." I felt a chill. Witnesses? People she's going to pay to lie. She says if she can prove you signed the agreement under coercion, they can annul it. That's illegal, I know. That's why I came. Because you gave me a chance to redeem myself, and I won't let Valerie destroy you again. I looked him in the eyes. My son. My baby. The child I cradled in my arms 40 years ago. Does Robert know about this? I don't know. I stopped talking to him. He's consumed by rage. He blames everyone but himself. I sighed deeply. Thank you for telling me, Edward. Are you going to do something? I'm going to call the counselor. He'll know how to proceed. Edward nodded. He was about to leave when I stopped him. Edward, wait. He turned around. Is David okay? Is he supporting you? A small smile appeared on his tired face. David is the best thing that ever happened to me. He endures me. He pushes me to be better. I don't deserve his love, but I'm fighting to deserve it someday. Then fight. For yourself, for him, for the man you can become. I will, Mom. I promise. He left. I immediately called Mr. Miller. I told him everything. This is serious, he said. If Valerie tries to fabricate false testimonies, we could charge her with obstruction of justice, but we need proof. What kind of proof? Recordings. Messages. Something that demonstrates her plan. I thought quickly. Counselor, what if we record her confessing? How? Let me think about it. I'll call you in a few hours. I hung up. I walked around the cabin thinking. Valerie was impulsive, arrogant. If she thought she could manipulate the situation, she would try. I picked up my phone and called Sean. Grandma, is everything okay? Yes, my love. I need to ask you a favor. It's important. Anything you need. Is your mother still using her phone for all her important calls? Yes, all the time. Why? Because I need you to help me get something, and I know what I'm about to ask you is difficult, but... Grandma, Sean interrupted me firmly. If it's to protect you from Mom, I'll do it. Mom is out of control. Even Macy is afraid of her. Is it that bad? Worse. Yesterday she broke plates because Dad didn't want to ask you to cancel the agreement. She screamed that you had poisoned us against her. My heart squeezed. All right. This is what I need. I explained the plan to him. It was risky, but necessary, because Valerie was about to learn that I was no longer the naive mother-in-law she could manipulate. I was a woman who had woken up, and this time I would get there first. The plan was simple, but required perfect synchronization. Sean would wait for the moment his mother was distracted. He would take her phone and check recent messages, calls, any evidence of what Valerie was planning. He would take screenshots and send them to me. It sounded easy, but asking a grandson to spy on his own mother was heartbreaking. Grandma, Sean had told me over the phone, it's not just your fight anymore. Macy and I live in that house. We see how Mom manipulates, lies, destroys. If we can help you stop her, we will. And 3 days later, the screenshots arrived. My phone vibrated at 11 o'clock at night. It was Sean. Grandma, I found this. Sorry it took so long, but I needed to be sure. I opened the images one by one and felt my blood run cold. Messages from Valerie with an unknown number. How much do you charge to testify that the old woman was confused when she signed? $5,000, changed from $50,000 pesos. Half now, half after the trial. Done deal. You know the family well. You'll say she was always forgetful, acting strange. There was more. Conversations with other people. Valerie was building an entire network of lies. A message with Robert said, "Your mother humiliated us. It's time to fight back. With 3 witnesses declaring her mental incompetence, we can annul everything." Robert's reply, "I don't know, Valerie. This could go wrong. Do you prefer to lose millions or grow a pair and get back what's ours?" Robert didn't reply again, but he didn't stop her either. I saved all the screenshots. I forwarded them to Mr. Miller along with a message. The evidence we needed. He replied 5 minutes later. This is enough for criminal charges. Do you want to proceed? I sat by the fireplace with a cup of tea in my hands. The fire danced in front of me, casting shadows on the walls. Did I want to send the mother of my grandchildren to jail? I thought of Sean and Macy, how they would suffer if their mother faced criminal charges. But I also thought of all the people Valerie had hurt with her manipulation, how she would continue to hurt if no one stopped her. Proceed, I finally wrote, but with one condition. Which one? I want to confront her first, face to face, give her one last chance to confess and retract. Ma'am, that could be dangerous. I know, but I need to do it. The counselor reluctantly agreed. We organized everything for the following Friday. That morning, Valerie received an official summons. She was to appear at the cabin with her lawyer to discuss irregularities in the fulfillment of the agreement. She arrived at 2 p.m. with a young, nervous lawyer who clearly didn't know what he was getting into. Valerie was wearing high heels, a pantsuit, her hair perfectly styled. Battle armor. This is ridiculous, she said as soon as she entered, without greeting anyone. I shouldn't have to be here. The agreement is legal. Please sit down, Ms. Marquez, Mr. Miller said in a formal tone. She sat down with a defiant attitude. Her lawyer placed his brief on the table. Commander Hayes was also present, and the same camera operator as before. More drama? Valerie scoffed. Cameras again? Do you feel powerful, mother-in-law? I didn't answer. I just took out my phone. Before we begin, I said calmly, I want to show you something. I slid the phone across the table. The screenshots of her messages were on the screen. Valerie looked at them. Her face went from arrogance to confusion, then to pure panic. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter where. What matters is what it says. Her lawyer picked up the phone and read. His expression immediately changed. Ms. Marquez, he said, his voice strained, did you write these messages? Valerie didn't answer. I am officially asking you, did you attempt to bribe witnesses to commit perjury? Silence. Mr. Miller intervened. Ms. Valerie Marquez, these messages constitute evidence of conspiracy to commit procedural fraud, bribery, and attempted obstruction of justice. These are serious crimes that can result in imprisonment of 5 to 10 years. Valerie turned pale. I just what? I asked. Just trying to destroy me again? Just looking for more ways to steal, lie, manipulate? You had no right to humiliate us like that. This is all your fault. My fault? My fault that you have a gambling addiction? My fault that you indebted your family? My fault that you planned to declare me incompetent to steal my properties? We had needs. We had rights. You had no right to my life or my money. Her lawyer closed his brief. Ms. Marquez, I cannot represent you in this. I'm sorry. He stood up and left without looking back. Valerie was left alone, trembling. I have 2 options for you, I said, retrieving my phone. Option 1, I formally present these messages. The district attorney proceeds with charges. You go to trial and likely to prison. She sobbed. Option 2, you sign a full confession. You admit everything you did. You agree to permanent distance from me, not just 3 years, and you enter a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction, paid for by you. What about Robert? She asked, her voice broken. Robert has his own path, but he didn't try to bribe witnesses. You did. What about my children? Sean and Macy can visit me whenever they want, but you will not have any contact with me ever again. That's cruel. No, cruel was what you did to me for years. Mr. Miller placed a document in front of her. You have 5 minutes to decide. Valerie read the document with tears streaming down her face. It was a complete confession. Every lie. Every manipulation. every plan to destroy me. If I sign this, I won't go to jail? If you comply with everything agreed upon, therapy, distance, payments, no. She took the pen with a trembling hand. She signed. But before leaving, she looked at me with pure hatred. Someday you're going to die alone, bitter old woman, and no one will mourn you. I smiled sadly. I'd rather die alone with dignity than live surrounded by vipers. She slammed the door shut on her way out. Commander Hayes saved the signed confession. Mrs. Turner, officially this closes the case, unless she breaches it. Thank you, Commander. When everyone left, I sat in the silence of the cabin. I had won, legally, emotionally. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired of years, of battles, of being strong when all I wanted was to be a mother. That night, I called Sean. Grandma, how did everything turn out? It turned out well, my love. Your mother signed a confession. She won't go to prison if she complies with the conditions. And Dad? Your dad has until tomorrow to make his first payment. If he doesn't, there will be consequences too. There was silence. Grandma, is all this worth it? So much pain? I looked at the flames in the fireplace. Yes, Sean, because for the first time in my life, I'm worth more than my money. I'm worth more than what I can give. I simply have worth. And that lesson, though painful, was the most important one I could teach him. February 1st arrived. Payday. I woke up early with a knot in my stomach. I checked my phone every 5 minutes waiting for the bank notification. At 8 in the morning, the first transfer came in, $1,133.40. Edward, punctual again. I felt a glimmer of pride. My younger son was complying. At 9, nothing from Robert. At 10, nothing. At noon, I called Mr. Miller. Robert hasn't paid. I know. I've tried to contact him. He's not answering calls. What do we do? The agreement is clear. If he breaches the first payment, the criminal charges are automatically reactivated, but you have the final word. I hung up and looked out the window. The pine trees swayed in the cold February wind. Robert, my eldest son, the one who was born first, the one who made me a mother. Was I really going to send him to face charges? My phone rang. It was Sean. Grandma, I need to talk to you. Tell me, my love. It's about Dad. He's bad. Really bad. Bad how? His company went bankrupt yesterday. The creditors took everything. The office, the vehicles, even the computers. They came with marshals and took everything. I felt a heaviness in my chest. And that's not the worst, Sean continued, his voice breaking. Mom left him. She left with her bags last night. She said she wasn't going to sink with him. And you? Macy? We stayed with Dad. Someone has to be here. But Grandma, I've never seen him like this. He's on the sofa, unbathed, not eating, just staring at the ceiling. He's not talking. I closed my eyes. Pain, anger, sadness, all mixed together. Where are you now? At home, but a notification arrived from the bank. They're 2 months behind on the mortgage. They're going to lose the house too. Sean, listen to me carefully. You and Macy can come stay with me. Always. This cabin is your refuge. What about Dad? That was the question. The question I had been avoiding. Your dad has to hit rock bottom. Completely. It's the only way he'll learn. Grandma, he's already hit rock bottom. He's already lost everything. Not everything. He still has you. Sean sobbed on the other end. I don't know what to do. Come tomorrow. All 3 of you. Your dad too. Really? Really, but under my conditions. I hung up and called Mr. Miller. Counselor, don't reactivate the charges. Not yet. Ma'am, give me 3 days. Just 3 days. All right, but after that, legally I must proceed. The next day, Robert arrived with his children. He got out of a borrowed car, wearing wrinkled clothes, a few days' beard, deep circles under his eyes. He was not the arrogant man who had arrived weeks ago. He was a ghost. Sean and Macy entered first. Robert stayed outside, as if he didn't deserve to come in. "Come in," I said from the doorway. He entered slowly, without looking me in the eyes. "Sit down." He sat on the sofa. The children went to the kitchen, giving us space. I made coffee. I served him a cup. He held it with trembling hands, but didn't drink. "I lost everything," he finally said, his voice hollow. "The company, the savings, the house, my wife, everything." "And now what?" "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know." "Are you going to blame me?" He looked up for the first time. His eyes were red, empty. "No, I can't blame anyone else anymore. It was my fault. Everything was my fault." It was the first time I had heard him admit it without excuses. "Do you know what your biggest mistake was, Robert? Trying to rob you?" "No. Your mistake was believing that money would make you somebody, that having more would give you value, that possessing things was the same as being a person." He bowed his head. "Your father taught you to work hard. I taught you to be honest. But at some point, you decided those lessons didn't matter, that there were shortcuts. I'm sorry, Mom. I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry. It's not enough, but it's a start." He took a sip of coffee. He was trembling. "I have no way to pay you back. I have nothing." "I know. So what do I do? Do I go to jail?" I took a deep breath. This was the decision I had been postponing. "I have a different proposal." "What is it?" "I forgive your entire debt, the $34,000. You don't have to pay me back." Robert raised his head sharply, confused. "What?" "But with conditions." "What are they?" "First, you come live here, to the cabin, with me, you and the children." "What?" "Second, you work. There's a lumber mill, changed from Aserradero, half an hour from here. The owner is a friend of your father's. I called him. He'll give you a job, physical labor, hard, low-paying." Robert blinked, processing. "Third, you go to therapy, every week, no exceptions." "And for how long?" 1 year. You live here, you work, you go to therapy, you save every penny. At the end of the year, if you comply with everything, I'll help you start over. A small investment for an honest business. Small, humble. I don't understand. Why would you do this? I stood up and walked to the window. Because I'm still your mother, and mothers don't abandon, even if their children have abandoned them. Robert broke down. He cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. Deep, wrenching sobs of years of arrogance crumbling. Sean and Macy came out of the kitchen and hugged him. "Dad," Macy said, crying, "everything is going to be all right." "I don't deserve this," Robert sobbed. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You're right. You don't deserve it, but I'm giving it to you anyway, because that's what real love is, not by merit, by grace." That night, we ate dinner together in the cabin. Hot soup, freshly baked bread, steaming hot chocolate. Robert ate in silence, still processing everything. Sean and Macy helped wash the dishes. When the children went to sleep in the guest room, Robert and I stayed in front of the fireplace. "Mom," he said softly, "how can you forgive me after everything I did?" "I didn't say I completely forgave you. I said I'm giving you a chance." "What's the difference?" "Forgiveness is earned with time and actions. The chance only requires you to show up, every day, to try. What if I fail? Then you'll fail, but at least you tried." Robert looked at the fire. "Does Edward know about this?" "I'll call him tomorrow. He is fulfilling his part. You must fulfill yours too." "And Valerie?" "Valerie took her path. She signed permanent distance. She is in a rehabilitation center for gambling addiction. If she completes it, maybe she can rebuild something with you. But that no longer depends on me." Robert nodded. "There's something else you need to know," I added. "What?" "The will remains the same. You will not receive an inheritance. Everything goes to the foundation and the children's trust." "I understand. I don't expect anything." "Good. Because this is not about money. It's about becoming the people our loved ones deserved us to be." And that night, for the first time in years, I slept knowing that maybe, just maybe, my son could find his way back to himself. A year passed, 12 months of transformation, of pain, of growth. Robert fulfilled every condition, every single one. He worked at the lumber mill from 6 in the morning. He came home with calloused hands, an aching back, his pride hurt, but his dignity intact. The first few months were terrible. I would hear him crying in his room some nights. A 42-year-old man, accustomed to suits and offices, now carrying logs and operating heavy machinery. But he didn't give up. Every Thursday he went to therapy with the psychologist in town. He returned quiet, thoughtful, processing layers of his own darkness. Sean and Macy finished the school year living in the cabin. They adapted well, better than well. They flourished away from the toxic environment of their previous home. Macy got the best grades of her life. Sean discovered he liked working with wood and started learning carpentry at the lumber mill on weekends. Edward fulfilled every payment, all 60 of them, without missing a single one. In March he called me, crying, "Mom, I made the last deposit, the full $104,000 with interest. I'm proud of you. I never thought I could do it, but David helped me. He kept me focused. He made me believe I could be better. He's good for you." "I know. That's why I proposed to him, and he said yes." My heart filled with joy. "When?" "In 2 months, and we want you to be the one to officiate, changed from Kassar. Well, to give a blessing, to be part of everything." "I'll be there." Valerie completed her rehabilitation program. 6 months institutionalized. She came out different. Thinner, more serious, without the manic sparkle in her eyes. She called me in September. "Mrs. Turner, I know I signed permanent distance, but I wanted to call to apologize, truly, without manipulation, without an agenda." "What did you learn, Valerie?" There was a long pause. "That addiction controlled me for years, that I used everyone around me as a resource, that I destroyed my own family for a void I could never fill with money or emotions. And now? Now I'm learning to live with myself, not to need the adrenaline of gambling, to face my problems head on. I'm glad to hear that. Will you ever be able to forgive me? Someday, maybe, but that day is not today." "I understand. Thank you for not sending me to jail, for giving me this opportunity." She hung up. I didn't know if I would hear from her again, and that was fine. In November, the first Christmas since everything exploded arrived. Sean and Macy decorated the cabin with lights and ornaments. We put up a small tree near the fireplace. Edward and David arrived 2 days before. They brought gifts, food, laughter. Robert prepared dinner: roast turkey, mashed potatoes, salad, hot apple cider. He did everything with his own hands. On the night of December 24th, we all sat around the table: Robert, Edward, David, Sean, Macy, and me. "I'd like to say something," Robert began, standing up. We all looked at him. "A year ago, I was a different person, a horrible person, arrogant, manipulative, willing to destroy my own mother for money." His voice cracked. Edward placed a hand on his shoulder. "This year taught me that hitting rock bottom is painful, but necessary. I lost everything material, but I found something I had forgotten: my humanity." He looked at his children. "Sean, Macy, I'm sorry for not being the father you deserved, for prioritizing appearances over real love. The two of them were crying. Edward, I'm sorry for dragging you into my schemes, for contaminating you with my sick ambition. Edward nodded, wiping his tears. And Mom? Robert looked at me directly. I'm sorry for forgetting who you were, for seeing you as a resource and not as the extraordinary woman who gave me life, raised me, loved me even when I didn't deserve it. He knelt in front of me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But if you can ever give it to me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor it. I took his face in my hands. I looked him in the eyes. Robert, I forgive you. He cried like a child in my arms. After dinner, while the others were washing dishes and singing Christmas carols, I went out to the porch. The sky was clear. The stars shone like diamonds over the snowy pines. Edward came out after me with 2 cups of hot chocolate. Mom, what are you thinking about? About your father. How much I still miss him. He would be proud of you, of how you handled all this. You think so? I know so. Dad always said you were the strongest woman he knew. Now I understand why. We drank our chocolate in comfortable silence. Edward, are you happy? Yes, Mom. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely happy. I have debts, I work 2 jobs, I live in a small apartment. But I have David, I have peace, I have dignity. Then you are rich, he smiled. Yes, I guess I am. The following days were magical. We walked through the woods. We played board games. We told stories. We laughed. On January 1st, while everyone was asleep, I opened my diary. I had started writing a year ago, documenting everything: the betrayal, the pain, the struggle, the redemption. I wrote the last entry. Today, I am 68 years old. I am no longer the woman who waited for crumbs of love from her children. I am no longer the mother who let herself be used out of fear of loneliness. I lost a family, but I gained something more valuable. I recovered myself. Robert is learning to be a real man. Edward found his way. Valerie is healing. Sean and Macy are growing up in an environment of genuine love. And I finally understood that dignified solitude triumphs over humiliating company. The cabin everyone despised became our refuge, the place where a broken family learned to rebuild, not with money, with truth, with consequences, with difficult but real love. My foundation for elderly women will open in March. We will help others like me find their voice, their strength, their dignity, because no one should have to wait until they are 67 to learn that they are worthy because of who they are, not because of what they can give. I closed the diary. I looked out the window. The sun was rising behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. A new year, a new life. Sean came out of his room, sleepy. Grandma, are you up already? I couldn't sleep. I was thinking. About what? That sometimes losing everything is the only way to gain what truly matters. He hugged me tightly. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my love. Robert made coffee. Edward made pancakes, changed from hotcakes. David put on music. Macy danced in the kitchen. And I, sitting at my table, watched them. My family. Broken, imperfect, rebuilding, but real. Finally, real. Because true wealth is not in what you possess, but in what you do not allow them to take from you. Your dignity, your peace, your self-love. And that no one will ever take from me again. If this story touched your heart, if you ever felt used, forgotten, or undervalued, leave me your comment. Tell me where you are watching from and what lesson you take away from Grace's story. Like this if you believe it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. And subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of brave women who learn to put themselves first without guilt. Because we all deserve love, but first, we must learn to love ourselves. Thank you for joining me until the end. Until the next story.